My Very Last Life, Chapter 23. Someday, when I am dead. When I was thinking about what I love about life. And I went back to that place I always go back to since I was a kid. The Middle Ages. And I imagined someday, when I am dead, I will be reunited with my friends from the Middle Ages. And I know their names. I don't know all their names. But I know Wolfram, and I know Walter. And I know the guy who called himself Der Stricker, which is the yarn weaver, the yarn weaver, the tail weaver, the yarn weaver. And the girl, and maybe Hildegard. And the girl is, I'll tell you about the girl. So you get the picture. This podcast episode is about the Middle Ages, so you can, there's like 5 guys out there in the world who are interested in the Middle Ages, and they probably all know more than me, and they don't want to hear about it from me. So you can turn off and go do something more meaningful with your life. While I rant about the Middle Ages. But for some reason, since I was a kid, this was my place. This was the place where I wanted to be. And it was, and then when I studied, medieval literature here in Germany and in Munich in the 80s and very early 90s, this image of the Middle Ages became more concrete, and it was about a handful of writers, 3, 4, half a dozen writers who really lived in the Middle Ages, and they're German. I studied medieval German literature, so they're German writers. You would. If I had studied French medieval literature or English medieval literature, more French medieval literature, I probably would have imagined those writers too, and I imagined this core of these German writers were great writers. There is a theory which I propagate, which German literature has never reached the standard of those 3, 4, 5 guys in the Middle Ages around the year 1200 or so, 1150 to 1250, I guess, something like that. Around that time, that was the core, that this highlight, this climax of literature in Germany in the Middle Ages. And I imagine them as I studied them. I imagined them, and they became real people to me, almost real people in a fake sense, real people in a faraway, distant sense, in a sense of like a fanboy sense, right? So not actually real, but I still imagine them. I imagine Walter, the poet, the love poet. I imagine Wolfram, this great poet of adventure and identity. I imagine the girl. I call her the girl because no one knows her name, and no one knows whether she was actually female or not. It's the writer who wrote the Nibelungenlied, the Nibelungenlied, which later, people who don't know the Middle Ages know it from what's his face, Wagner, who turned it into the cycle, the ring of the Nibelungen. But the original, which has very little to do with Wagner's version, is, and it was brilliant. I hate Wagner's version. I think it's crap. But the original is brilliant, and I think it was written by a woman. The odds are against me. There are very, very few books written by women in the Middle Ages. There were some, but few. And but this feels to me like a book written by a woman. Maybe I'm wrong, but no one knows. No one knows who it was who wrote this book. And then there's the Stricker, who was not a top-notch poet, but he I he had this variety and this colorful love of all kinds of genres and all kinds of storytelling, and he was all over the place. And that's kind of like me, you know. I love the variety of genres. I love all kinds of stuff. It's not good marketing to do this and that here and there, and you know, jump from style to content to genre, you know, all your life. But that's what he did, and he loved doing it, and he did it well. Some of it was really crap. Some of his short stories, his fables, are well meant, but they're not actually good. But even in them, you can see this colorful, vivid, vibrant, you know, look at life as a kind of a huge collage of craziness. That's the Stricke. And I imagine when I'm dead, going to that place where they are, a tavern. In their time, there probably were no taverns. It would probably be like a stable in a cloister, in a monastery somewhere, and you know, they're living in there. They're sitting around with the horses, you know, and they're sleeping on the hay or someplace, and then some guy, you know, sneaks into the kitchen of the monastery, and it comes out with a keg of beer or something, and they all get smashed together, and I want to be there. That's where I want to be. I want to be with these guys. The guys I want to be with. Strange, huh? And I wonder, would they accept me? Of course they wouldn't. These guys they were great poets and great writers, and I'm not. I have not succeeded. I have not achieved that level. And they will look at me as an outsider, and they will look down on me. I guess they will not accept me as one of them. But that is the dream. That is the greatest thing I would love, that I can imagine. Would you accept me, Wolfram? Or would I slink away in despair and self-loathing? You know, you're the only part of society I ever wanted to be a part of. Astrid let the cat in. The cat has been meowing at the door. And so finally she let him in. Her in. Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Slinking around, wants something to eat. Okay. And I think about the great medieval novel. I've thought about it often, and you know, I've written several different kinds of outlines and proposals for novels, and I one or two of them, several of them actually, I tried to sell and failed. I could not sell them, and the novels are always about the writers, these writers. And sometimes it's about just a biography of the writer. Sometimes it's about the so-called Sängerkrieg. It's a legend. It probably didn't happen, but it's a legend about the Sänger, the poets, the singers, the poets, the war of the singers, the war of the poets. And it's a legend of these great poets getting together at the feet of one of their great Gunnar Mäzenen, guys who give them money. I don't know the English word. I'm losing my English. I don't know the English word. So the guy who gives them money, and this is historically true. He did give them money to buy books, to write books. Hermann von Thüringen, Hermann of Thuringia. And the legend goes that he set up a meeting of all the great poets, like, you know, I don't know, 10 of them or 6 of them or something, and they had to compete with each other, and so they all, you know, wrote a poem or wrote some kind of a novel or something, and on one day they all competed. They they stood before Hermann of Thuringia and spoke their poetry, and and he picked out the winner and he picked out the loser. And the thing was, of course, the loser, this is the Middle Ages, so they kill the loser. It's like, I mean, how much better would the Oscar ceremony be if they picked out the best director and also the worst director, and then they killed the worst director, the worst producer, the worst actor? That would be, I would totally watch that. That would be great. So anyway, so that's the principle behind the war of the poets, the war of the singers in the Middle Ages. Legend that this happened. Maybe something similar happened. Who knows? And then there's a magician involved. A sorcerer. He comes in and disturbs everything. And then they go out for a year and they wander around and they come back. Okay, so. But I imagine heaven to be similar to that. I imagine waking up after dying in this room or just in front of this room. And I go through the door and there's this room and the poets are all there and they're competing with each other. And one of them is going to get killed and one of them is going to get crowned. And I watch it, and afterwards, they all leave the room, and then the room is, it's the throne room. It's the king is there. He wasn't a king. He was I think it was a graf or something, a hertog. He was a hertog. He was a duke, hertog, Hermann. And so they all leave. He's among his aristocracy, and they have to go all out and sleep in the stables because they even though he admires their work, they're still just riders. So the lowest of the low. I mean, seriously. And I would go out there to the stables with him, and I would sneak into the kitchen, get a keg of beer, and bring it out, and we would all get drunk on beer and wine and talk, and that's my heaven. And then when I write, I write trying to meet the conditions and the requirements of the modern market, which is I write, pop genre literature, right, which I love, and but it's according to the market. So I write thrillers for the market. I try to write them as well as I can. I'm proud of them, but every once in a while I ask myself, do I meet the standard of these guys? Wolfram, Walter, the girl, Stricke. Do I meet their standard? And the thing is, they also wrote what we would call genre. We Germans look back, and there's this, national pride, right? And these are great poets, and they when they talk about these poets, at university, it's all about great poetry and literature and high literature and all the symbolism and all this, But the thing is, like Wolfram, arguably the greatest German poet of all time, he wrote or translated and wrote knightly chivalrous romances, knights errant. That's his story. So it was, it was genre literature. Basically, he wrote about the adventures of a knight who, started as a nobody and became a great king, and that was, it was about fighting dragons and other knights and jousting and having adventures and getting the girl. He was a great poet, but at the same time, he was writing for simple guys, simple people. The aristocracy, of course, was largely not educated. It was just the aristocracy. Education at that time was something for the bureaucracy. So the underlings, they had to learn how to read and write. Reading and writing was not the thing that the aristocracy was that interested in. And they were interested, of course, in fighting and in land. And so in farming, basically, and cutting down trees and fighting in military, and the writers were just underlings up to that point. Of course, people like Wolfram and Walter changed that. And they wrote basically genre literature that was exciting and that got these aristocrats excited about, going out and jousting. Right, that was the heroism, the heroism of being a knight. That was what the aristocracy loved. And it's not these guys. This is not Thomas Mann, or Bertolt Brecht, or these guys who, I don't know. This is not someone who would publish in the New Yorker. It's not Jonathan Franzen talking about detailed descriptions of normal family daily life. That would have bored these guys. These guys would have been so bored out of their minds by what we consider high literature, what we, in this our overeducated times, consider high literature. These guys were just barely educated, and they wrote stories about knights and dragons. Dragons not that much. That's kind of a modern perception, but knights and jousting with other knights basically, and gaining the princess and the kingdom, right? And that's something I love about them, because I also love genre. I don't really like this, what we consider now high literature, the literature for the educated class, the literature for the bored elite, basically. Where you talk about, life in a big house, overprivileged, and the things you have to deal with. I've never been able to, I've never had the opportunity, the privilege of dealing with those kind of problems, and they just I don't care about them. But I would love to imagine being a knight errant, going into a dark woods. That still turns me on. And so that's what these guys did on a high level of mysticism, of poetry, of spirituality. These guys were all about that. And that's what I want to do. In the end, I'm sitting here writing thrillers, but what I think, will I ever write the book that Wolfram von Eschenbach, in the afterlife, when I am dead and stand before him and say, I wrote this book that he would like, a book that he would like, that he would approve of, that he would say, oh yeah, that's not bad. Come in and have a beer. See, that's what I want. Strange, huh? Strange that some imaginary time, of course, how the Middle Ages really were, I don't know, and I probably would not be able to. In the real Middle Ages, I would not probably last 5 minutes. I mean, must have been a horrible time. And these guys, they're much less, they don't know what DNA is. They never saw the moon landing. These guys are completely undereducated. I'm far more educated than they are. But somehow it's always been the thing that has captured my imagination. That's always been the place I will go to. I feel like that's my spiritual home. Maybe before I die, I have to do something to acknowledge, to reach out once more to that home. I sat here today and wrote down a lot of notes about another novel of the Middle Ages, another novel of these guys, and I got them all. I got the war of the singers, the war of the poets. I got the search for the girl who wrote the Nibelungenlied. I have Klingsor, the trickster, this magician, this sorcerer who was kind of underused in medieval novels. I think there's much more potential there than Wolfram, for example, used. He was a trickster character. I love him. Walter's themes, love, the journey from abstract love to physical love. Wolfram's themes, identity, existence, finding yourself, learning to exist, fighting for the right to exist, spiritually exist. Stricker's themes, the the conundrum of truth, the paradox of life, the themes of the girl who wrote the Nibelungenlied, the betrayal of the individual by society. And I think of Hammon of Thuringia, who oversaw the war of the poets. And I imagine him as kind of like almost a symbol for God. And we're all sitting at God's knees trying to impress him. And he's deciding who's going to go to heaven and who's going to go to hell based on the stories we tell. I would love to be in that contest. That would be a contest I would love to be in. The contest of life, which is so unclear what is expected of us, some kind of moral. Is this a moral contest? Is this contest of who can be successful? Is it a contest of who can live longer? Is it a contest of who can love him or herself more, be happier, be self-content, be self-confident? What is the contest? What is this contest that we're in? I don't know what it is. The true life, the contest of true life, I don't know what it is. But if I were to be called before God, and there were, 5 other poets in the room, and he said, okay, you're here in this elite group of poets, and you have to compete with them, and write the best poem, tell the best story. You have to entertain me best, and the best guy goes to heaven, the worst guy goes to hell, and the rest of you, well, I don't know. I haven't thought it out that far. I would love to take part in that contest. I wouldn't win. I'd probably go to hell, or maybe I just be ignored, which is probably worse. But that's the contest I can imagine. That's the contest I want to be in. I don't like the contest of life as it is. This with the no rules, with unclear goal, with unclear timing. At least the contests that Hammon had, the War of the Poets, at least it was clear. The rules were clear. At least that, Well, anyway, so that's it. That's a lot of nonsense about the Middle Ages without really saying anything, but I just feel like I just want to be there. That's the thing that touches my heart. These guys, 4 or 5 guys, long dead, 1,000 years dead. And the things they wrote, which are still there today. You got to find them. You got to learn how to speak, or read medieval German, which is difficult to do it, but you can do it. And here I am, basically, even though I'm 60 years old, I still feel like a little boy, 13-year-old kid in Hawaii, dreaming of being with these guys. That's it, folks. And thanks for listening. Tune in again next week or tomorrow or whenever it is I do this again. Whatever, I don't know. If you're interested in the things that are really important to me, I write them in books and I put them on videos. Check out my books on Amazon.com or my YouTube channel or my Twitter and Facebook feeds, or subscribe to my newsletter. It's kind of a lot now that I say it like that. Or any of the above, whatever. I hope I can contribute something to your life, or to someone's life, anyone's life really, in some way. I appreciate your support, and I wish you all the luck and success and happiness and fulfillment in your life. Take care till next time.